This is the Crowd Crux Crowdfunding Podcast with Sal Brigman, where we cover everything you need to know to launch a successful crowdfunding campaign. We speak with proven entrepreneurs who've raised money from the crowd and want to teach you how to do the same. Stay tuned because we're about to reveal how to launch your dream project. With your host, Sal Brigman.
Before we get started with this podcast episode, I want to take a second to introduce you to my friends at Fulfillrite. If you need help shipping out your Kickstarter or Indiegogo perks or rewards, Fulfillrite is the absolute best company for you. I've been working with them for a while and I can vouch for their services. They make it dead simple and take all of the headache out of shipping out all of those boxes, all of those orders to your backers and your customers. If you want to check them out, go to fulfillrite.com at fulfillrite.com. I'm chilling here in my home in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. I got a trusty cup of coffee here by my side as we're about to launch into today's podcast. I think you're going to like this podcast episode because it is extremely relatable. We brought a member from the Crowdfunding Demystified audience onto this podcast, and I've interviewed him. His first campaign was not a success. He learned a tremendous amount from it and was able to apply all of the things that he discovered about marketing and Kickstarter to his second campaign, which was a success, and now he's gearing up for his third campaign. I think you're going to find this guest to be more relatable. Our last episode, I believe it was 147, the guest was phenomenal. He raised over $4 million on Kickstarter. This is the Cyanide and Happiness brand. That number is just astounding. It's breathtaking that you can now raise that amount of money online. But at the same time, he had a very large fan base. He was more seasoned in the marketing terms. For someone who's just starting out, who doesn't know what marketing is, who doesn't know what crowdfunding is, or Kickstarter or Indiegogo, it can seem a little bit intimidating. And that's why I wanted to talk to this guest today. So in this interview, we're going to go through everything that he learned. And what's more is this entrepreneur or this creative type is not a marketer. He is not an expert in internet marketing. He's not an expert in any way in marketing. In fact, I think he would describe himself as more of an inventor, more of an innovator, more on that side, a creative type, even coming up with these different product ideas, figuring out how to make these cool products, etc. He's more in that light. So you're hearing from someone who is not going to go into marketing jargon. He's going to lay it straight for you. He's going to tell you exactly what you have to do if you do want to be successful on Kickstarter and raise money and start that business or put on that play or whatever it is that you're raising money for. Have a successful crowdfunding campaign. The other thing you're going to notice with this interview is the guest really went in depth into PR. PR, or public relations, is an awesome way to get free traffic to your product or your campaign, and it's also a way to boost your credibility. To give you some insight here, when I just started online, I was just some blogger, and there are lots of bloggers out there. I imagine you can sympathize, even podcasters. But when I first started to get my very first media hits, when I started to appear in the media, it started to elevate my game. People would come on my site and they can see I've been cited by the New York Times, by the Wall Street Journal, by CNN, by a lot of other publications, more recently Founder Magazine, as a crowdfunding expert. And that elevates my game, but it also elevates the perception around my brand. Because if these other mainstream media sources are using my information, my website, to inform their stories, it says something about the quality of the information that I'm putting out. And I think that's why people are more likely to listen to what I have to say and are more likely to take my advice, because I have been there, I've done it, I've learned a tremendous amount, I've had many guests on the show, and it just translates. So if you also want to boost your brand in this way, and you also want to get free traffic, I would highly recommend starting to learn a little bit more about how PR works. About a month ago, I started to put together this step-by-step tutorial as to how to get media hits. How do you get a journalist to write about you? How do you get in the news? How do you actually have a trending story? How do you convert that also into revenue for your business? And as I started to put together these videos, I was getting feedback. I realized that I need to put really short, actionable content for you guys. So I rehashed everything. The videos now are about 2 to 3 minutes long. I'm extremely proud of the work I've done thus far. They go really in depth and are just sort of nuggets of gold about PR and how the system works. So you can just very simply follow the instructions and you will get the result. You will get that traffic that you are looking for. The other thing I've invested with these videos is I've really put my time in trying to make them entertaining, to try to make them easy to watch, including different things like motion graphics, like video footage, like putting really cool transitions, etc. into the videos. That I think is going to maintain your attention as you go through these 2 to 3 minute long videos on various topics. Some of them are a bit longer, 6 minutes if we're going into something more in depth, but for the most part, they are extremely actionable. And sort of in mind while I was putting together these videos was, if you're coming home from work, you don't want to listen to a boring video. You don't want to watch some content that's going to put you to sleep or that it feels like more work. So when you come home from work, you're done, you're finally on the couch, you can just tune into these 1 or 2 videos and you'll be done the entire course in 2 weeks' time. You could be doing this part-time. You can instantly then know how to get PR traffic, how to boost your brand, and how to raise money successfully on Kickstarter. So if you want to check out that tutorial that I am coming out with, you can go to crowdcrux.com/PR. That is crowdcrux.com/PR. And I will be coming out with that relatively soon. I think I'm also going to be discounting it heavily for the first people that get in to also get some feedback from them, because I do want to make this product amazing. I want people to get results. I want everyone who enrolls to get a media hit. So I am going to probably be discounting it heavily in the beginning when I launch it. Again, that is crowdcrux.com/PR. Okay, let's get into today's interview. I think you're going to love it. Coming up right after this. Guido, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on the show.
Totally. Where are you hailing in from? Where are you located?
Yeah, I'm in Long Island, New York, kind of right in the middle.
Long Island. Cool. I'm in Brooklyn.
Oh, okay. So we're close. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, definitely. It's cold this time of year. We had a snowfall just last week or so.
Yeah. It's I mean, I like the snow, so for me, it's kind of a nice thing. But I'm not a hot weather guy.
Really? I'm like the opposite.
Yeah.
Like I turn into such a wuss when it gets cold out. Like I don't want to go outside. I just order in like Netflix, like all that kind of stuff. I don't want to go outside.
I love it. I'm a big skier, so for me, it's great.
Cool. So I want to sort of clue the listeners in a little bit here. I want to ask you, so when you sent me the email last week, what was going through your mind? Because I do get a lot of emails from people pretty much just trying to like market their campaign, but yours stood out to me. So what was in your mind when you sent that email?
Yeah, so it was actually, I've been kind of culminating, I'm going to be launching a new Kickstarter in the coming months. It's going to be a kind of, I can't really go into too much, but it's kind of a piece of really interesting home decor with just this really wow factor to it, says the inventor, of course, right?
Cool.
So, and it's at addictivedecor.com. So that'll be there for people to kind of go and check out a little bit of it. Can't show too much, but there'll be something there. So basically, yeah, I have been listening to a ton of audiobooks and different podcasts, and I just trying to really take it all in as far as learning from my past mistakes and, what can I do different for this one? And I just happened to bump into your site. And I was like, oh my God, there's such awesome information here. But I wonder if, I can help other people avoid a lot of the silly mistakes. And when I was reading through your bio, I was like, oh, this guy actually wants to hear from people who have these kinds of experiences. I thought it might be cool, to share with your podcasters, podcast listeners that, hey, here's a here's a real guy and made a ton of mistakes, but learning on each one and correcting.
What I love about that is you're really trying to add value to the listenership and add value to the podcast. And that just really perked my ears up. Like I wanted to learn more, sent you some questions, and you just pretty much like poured out this entire story of all of these lessons that you learned from these different campaigns, and very hard-won lessons, I might say.
Yeah, they were definitely. I mean, starting with my my first Kickstarter, which was something that I had affectionately called Shapoopy, and in the end, it was really just this dog walking device. And, there's a distinction between being an inventor and being an entrepreneur. And I think I had certainly confused that in the beginning, where it's like, the inventor falls in love with their product. It's their baby. Of course, everybody's going to want it. But then you're faced with the harsh reality of you put this thing out on Kickstarter and you get pretty much no response. Right. And so that was a really tough pill to swallow. It took me a while to kind of like get back up. But I was like, you know what? That taught me so much. I made a lot of.
This first campaign, how much were you trying to raise?
Oh yeah, that was a fun one. 47,000. You can see it. Kind of a silly. This was back when Kickstarter. It appeared as though there was like some magic pill that you would just kind of push. You press this button and all of a sudden, poof! You had $1 billion coming into your account. Right? I didn't understand all of the stuff that has to go around it. It's not just the product. The product is like 5% of the whole thing. Mm-hmm. It's it's the marketing, it's the blogging, it's just all encompassing. I just didn't know.
So you hit that, and I'm sure you're expecting something. When did you realize, okay, maybe this campaign isn't going as I thought?
Yeah, about let me see, because this was a while ago. Maybe a week in, because in the beginning, of course, you get this influx, right? Because you're being viewed on the first page of Kickstarter, and you're getting hit pretty hard. And I was like, oh, this is going pretty well. And then all of a sudden, it just tanked. And I had a Google search, a Google alert out, and I began to see, kind of what was happening. And all of a sudden, I saw this website called KickTrack, which I'm sure everybody's familiar with. But basically, it just kind of shows you where you're trending towards. And it showed me trending, pretty much flat and not towards my goal at all.
So you launched the campaign. There's a lot of eagerness. There's a lot of excitement. Like you don't really know what's going to happen because some campaigns they take off. Their product really resonates for some reason on the Kickstarter platform, or they have the marketing. A lot of these campaigns, they've actually done a lot of work behind the scenes. So you sort of hit this wall here. What were the emotions like? Like what were you feeling at that moment?
Yeah, it was really kind of like a gut punch, right? So I said, oh my gosh, I got to do something here. This is really, really bad. And of course, I have all my friends coming to me going, what's going on? What's going on? I was just kind of sitting there scratching my head, and I said, oh boy, I better do something. But it was really a guttural and very visceral, like, oh no, this is not going to go well.
And that's really hard too, launching in front of your friends, them seeing like the campaign is lagging. There's a lot of social pressure around that. I can imagine that's a very difficult time.
Yeah. So my first line of defense, and I think it's a pretty rookie mistake, is basically turning towards the pay-to-play models, right? So there's tons of people out there that as soon as you launch your Kickstarter, they inundate you with, oh, I see your Kickstarter. It looks so great. Meanwhile, they have no idea who you are nor what you do. They don't really care. And they just kind of inundate you basically just to get your money. On there's Facebook platforms where basically, you pay, I think I paid $150 to kind of socialize my Shapoopy thing on this Facebook follower that had, I don't know, he had a ton of Facebook followers. I don't know, it was like 90,000 people or something. For $150, he gave me one kind of blast out, and I was like, oh, that should do something. I got 0 pledges from it, right? So I wasted $150 right there.
Okay, so after you made that investment, if you will, that didn't work out. Then did you decide to do more work, or did you give up? Like, what happened then?
No. Yeah, I'm very much not the person to give up. So my second line of defense was, okay, I got to find. I then started to kind of look into the news, people who were in my field in the pet related product industry, and I had found this one company, and they were awesome. And I kind of called them and I said, hey, I need some help, and they said, "Oh, sure, we'll help you out," and they tried to help me out with my Facebook page. And that one cost me, I think it was like $400. I got a few, backers from that, but certainly still didn't really do anything. It was kind of like this, throwing a pebble in a pond and expecting there to be this wave, but I got barely a ripple.
That's really disheartening. I mean, I just think you have a budget here. You've worked hard to put together a campaign. You have a product that you love, and you're spending marketing dollars on it, and it isn't seeing the kind of results that you want it.
Right.
That's really hard. I think that for me, when I've tried to do product launches or I've tried to launch new stuff, whenever something doesn't work out, in the moment, it is like, it's soul crushing, if you will.
It is.
But then I sort of, like maybe a month later, I look back and then I'm like, okay, I can learn something from this. I can take away something. What was it that you looked back on that experience and took away?
So first and foremost is, I think as an inventor, you really have to look at your product from not just your vantage point, and certainly not your friends and family's vantage point, because they're going to think it's wonderful. You have to decide, am I solving a problem for me, or am I solving a problem which is for everybody? If you're solving a problem for yourself, it's just, take it out back, bury it, and move on. So that's really what I should have done. I should have realized that this was a product I was solving an issue for myself. So that was key point number one. I would say the second one was, I really should have had, a following before I launched, and not just a couple of hundred. Maybe a few thousand, something like that. So those two pieces was really what I took away from that.
And I think that the reason possibly that was sort of a belief that you had is because just the media literally hypes up campaigns. It makes it seem like it's so easy to raise money that instantly you don't need any kind of following, etc. And there are examples of that. Like I've had people on the podcast who don't have any planning, don't have any experience, don't have any following, and they smash their goal. But there are reasons behind that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
The other thing I just want to quickly say here, and I do want to also give you more time also to share your thoughts here, but we've heard from a lot of different marketers and very well-known entrepreneurs like Tim Ferriss that you should always be making a product for yourself. And I do think that makes sense, but you also have to consider what marketplace are you a part of. So if you're making it for yourself and you're not part of a big marketplace, it doesn't make sense.
Right. Absolutely. And there's tons of caveats in there, tons and tons, where, sometimes that absolutely makes sense. In my particular case with Shaboopy, I was really solving a problem for myself. And that became obvious right after. Now, what I will tell you is that one of the really wonderful things about Kickstarter is you can really use it as a platform. And I'm certainly not the first person to say this, but you can certainly use it as a platform to kind of, get a gauge of, hey, is this a good product or not, with very little input, right? So once that died, I was like, oh, well, nobody wants this thing, so forget it. I need to move on to the next thing. So that's an interesting way of viewing it too.
Okay. So when you actually launch the campaign, you get some feedback, you sort of decide, okay, I sort of got some market validation here. I realize I don't want to spend my time in that way. A lot of people, to be honest, after they meet all of that kind of frustration, they meet all of those negative emotions, and particularly with your friends and family, seeing this campaign didn't launch well, they kind of like give up.
Right. Absolutely.
What did you actually do?
So in my event, I took off from quote unquote inventing for a while, and that is something which is really, I am an inventor through and through. I dream about it. I wake, first thing I'm thinking about. It's just how I'm made. So I spent about 8 months working on a pet project, something which I call Orbis, the amazing kinetic sculpture. If you Google it, you can find it. It's kind of a neat wooden sculpture, and I just spent a lot of time working on that. And taking the time to really understand where things went wrong. And what's really interesting is that while I was developing that actually led to my second Kickstarter, which was successful.
How exactly did that connection get formed? Like, how did that lead into that? I had to interrupt this podcast episode because I want to introduce you to my friends at The Gadget Flow. Their product discovery platform reaches 22 million people per month. They've helped more than 5,000 crowdfunding campaigns thus far and they have a social media following of more than 700,000 followers. If you want to gain access to their marketplace and list your own product, you can go to thegadgetflow.com/submit and list your project today.
So I'm what's called an embedded engineer, and it's electronics essentially. So I was using an Arduino platform, which is really popular in the hobbyist market. And as I was working with it, I began to realize this is really difficult to kind of test because you can't get at certain things. And so I was like, well, there needs to be a better way to be able to test this thing. So I came up with a test board that worked really well for me. And then all of a sudden I said, oh, this is not really something that's just for me. This will actually really help the Arduino community as a whole. And that was a change point because I was, it passed the litmus test of, is it for me? Or is it for everybody? Or maybe it's for both. And that actually ended up being for both.
That's so fascinating because you're just kind of going back to your roots of, hey, I want to invent something. I want to make something cool. It seems like the difference here is you sort of have more of a mind now for the problems that you're experiencing and like thinking, okay, who else is experiencing this problem? Like it goes from like, this is a cool idea I could launch to like, okay, I'm trying these different things out. Could that actually have a marketplace?
Right, exactly.
That's really cool. Were you working on this like on weekends or like, is this your full-time gig or like, was this part-time? How were you working on it?
I have a full-time job. This was something that I was doing on the side.
Cool.
Just a pet project. Yeah.
Very cool. I'm looking here at the campaign. You successfully raised your goal. You surpassed your goal. And it looks like a little bit, almost under $15,000 that you raised for this campaign.
Yeah.
Congrats, man.
Thanks. That was exciting. That was like, okay, I got, that was a bit of redemption that felt really good. But still a ton, I certainly still made mistakes, but I learned a lot and corrected based on the first one. So, that one did better. And, my backers actually love the product. I still sell it now. It's actually in Europe, it's in US, it's kind of everywhere. So that one worked well.
I'm sure that everyone is dying to know what exactly did you change from the first to the second campaign. I had to interrupt this podcast episode because I want to introduce you to my friends at The Gadget Flow. Their product discovery platform reaches 22 million people per month. They've helped more than 5,000 crowdfunding campaigns thus far, and they have a social media following of more than 700,000 followers. If you want to gain access to their marketplace and list your own product, you can go to thegadgetflow.com/submit and list your project today.
Sure, yeah. So the biggest one was I started to make media connections ahead of time. And so I'm a big, I don't know if you ever heard of Robert Kiyosaki.
Yes.
He's awesome. So he has this thing where he always says, you look at 100 houses, you like 10 of them, you offer to buy 5, 3 accept, you take 1, right? And it's very much just this numbers game. So I basically I just made an Excel spreadsheet and I found tons of people that were in the Arduino section of bloggers, and I went down the list one by one. And finally I hit on a guy who, Clive Maxfield. He's a writer for EE Times, who's an awesome guy. And he helped me out tremendously. He did 4 stories based on that thing that I just said, Orbis, and then did a bunch of lead up pieces up to the Kickstarter. And that was the turning point for that one.
Wow. That's a lot of stories. You formed a good relationship there.
Yeah. And I still have them, which is great.
Very cool. What was the effect of like these stories? Was that kind of like to improve the social proof around your campaign? Was it actually driving traffic and backers? What was sort of the result of those stories?
Yeah, that was interesting because initially he said, I'm going to do what did they say? I think it was a 4-piece story or something. And the first one, I teach electronics to some kids in my neighborhood. So he said, let's start with that piece. And so we did that. And he just made reference to my Kickstarter, right? It was just kind of like a little, oh, by the way, he's doing a Kickstarter. And then the next one was, on Orbis, and again another mention of it, but a little bit heavier, right? And I began to see this ramping flow coming into my Kickstarter, where more, because Kickstarter breaks down where your backers are coming from, and I began to see more and more were coming from EE Times, and then when the actual one hit about the Dr. Arduino product, which is for the Arduino thing that I made, that's when I really saw a bunch of backers come online.
Okay.
So yeah, I think the social proof around it was really interesting, because I had a bunch of people commenting on his threads, and I was commenting back with them, so it was cool.
Oh, so you were interacting with the readers then of that article?
Yes.
Ooh, that's a smart idea.
Yeah, that was pivotal.
Cool. I also understand that with this second campaign, you also set up a landing page?
Yeah, so I set up a landing page. That was one of the other things I had learned was, okay, you need to have a landing page, right? But I kind of missed the idea of what the landing page was supposed to actually be doing. And so I set up this landing page, which basically I hooked up with MailChimp to collect people's email addresses. But instead of driving traffic to it, I ended up having, because of that one connection, I ended up getting invited to all these Arduino things kind of throughout the state. So every weekend I was like kind of like this traveling, hey, give me your email guy, going to all of these different Arduino things. And, I got a ton of emails that way, but not nearly as much as I could have gotten if I had done some, I don't want to say advertising, but some kind of interaction on the Arduino forums, for example. I think that would have been a much better choice of time.
Okay.
So
first question, what software tool were you using for the landing page?
What was it was actually, I just made it myself. At that time, it was being hosted by Yahoo.
Okay.
Wasn't terribly good, but, it did the job. Yeah.
And for those in the community who are just kind of starting out and don't know what a landing page is, how could you sum that up? Like, what is the purpose of it? Why did you set that up?
So it's a very quick and to the point, what's the product? What are you trying to solve? And when can I get it? Hey, give me your email address. But more importantly, like, you kind of got to give people a hook. Like, why is somebody going to give you their email address so that way you can spam them? Nobody's really going to do that. So you got to give them something in return, right?
Definitely. I think to add to that, the one thing that I take away from landing pages is the call to action here is pivotal for any kind of marketing materials. Let's just say the landing page. The call to action is, why would someone decide to hand over their email address to you, and why would you even want them to? And that's because email is the primary sales channel for most online products. And it's kind of deceiving because social media is so big, but a huge portion of pledges on day one for a campaign comes from email. I've had a lot of people on this podcast sort of verifying that and the importance and power of an email list. So that's sort of what the landing page is designed to do leading up to the campaign, is to gather email addresses. So you went out in the field, you actually went to these different events, you were talking to people, you gathered a lot of emails. What actually happened with those emails? I'm speaking to the crowdfunders in the audience who have already launched a Kickstarter campaign, or have actually even successfully run a campaign. And the reason is, I think you will understand this pain point most. And that is, when you finally do raise money on Kickstarter or Indiegogo, the hardest part is not collecting the cash. The hardest part is shipping out all of those perks and rewards to your backers. It is a nightmare, my friends. It's a lot of spreadsheets, it's a lot of headache, and it's a lot of stress. That's why I recommend BackerKit. If you have not heard of BackerKit, they help you collect surveys, they help you collect data, and the entire fulfillment process is just so much easier and so many less spreadsheets when you use their software. You can check them out at backerkit.com and use CrowdCrux for a special discount.
I think I probably collected about 200 or 300 emails. I would say I maybe got 2 backers out of it.
Why do you think that is?
That was something I was never really able to figure out, because I actually, when I was on site, I was showing people the product and I was having them hold it and then test stuff and, hey, look what this thing can do. And everybody got very, very excited about it. And so I was always kind of puzzled about that. The only thing that I kind of came to was, because a lot of the venues were at college sites. right? And college kids tend to not have, a ton of money. So maybe that was the reason. I was like, well, I'm going to skip it for now. I'm not really sure. I mean, that was the only thing I could come up with.
Did you get any kind of feedback when you were showing people the product?
Oh yeah, people's face just lit up, and they were so excited, like, oh my God, this could have saved me so much time in my last product, or my last project or whatever. Yeah, people loved it. They still love it. I get emails all the time, and it's like, it makes their life a whole lot easier.
One of the things that's really hard to do, and even looking backwards, it's very easy to look backwards and say, oh, we should improve this, we should improve that. Those kinds of reactions, that kind of response, if you have a camera, guys, get it out and film it. Like, that is amazing footage that you can use in your video. That is amazing testimonials and social proof for your campaign. If you are going out in the field and showing people your products, just having that video footage just puts you like a leg up above everyone else.
That's a really great idea. I didn't even think of that, and I should have been doing that with my new Kickstarter. I'm going to add that in. So,
well, it's very easy to make armchair critiques. It's a lot harder to do it in the moment, right?
Right. No, but that's a great suggestion.
So you smashed your goal with this campaign. I mean, you succeeded your goal. This product that you had just an idea of is now a reality. You raised money, etc. Did you learn anything else that you could pass on to the community about this second campaign?
Yeah, the second campaign, again, there was just so much stuff that had come out of that. One of the things which I think was really pivotal was I didn't convert my landing page over to a full-blown website, so that way when the campaign ended, people could go immediately and go and pre-order. I didn't, just because it was so busy during that month, I just couldn't get to it. And because of that, I ended up losing a lot of sales. So I would say that that's probably the biggest takeaway is, before you even launch, have your secondary website ready where it's, the second after your campaign ends, you go and you turn that thing on, because you need that transition.
That is hard to do. Just setting up all of the e-commerce functionality. Like, there are e-commerce sites out there like Shopify, etc. But just quickly turning that on, it takes time to do. Two quick solutions I can think of. Number one, if you use the sponsor of this show, BackerKit, they have pre-order functionality. Also, if you transition your campaign over to Indiegogo, you could take advantage of their in-demand program. But just setting up even, I think, a way for like an interest kind of list, that's another way you can sort of quickly transition people over. But it is something that's hard to do when you have so much going on, right?
Yeah, I mean, that was, I got to tell you though, I mean, it was probably the craziest month of my life, but it was awesome. I mean, I loved every second of it.
What did it feel like to finally be able to say you had this successful campaign?
Oh, it was awesome. It was awesome. But I think the night that it ended, I think I slept for like a week. So, it was really exciting, and I passed out. But yeah, it was a great feeling. It was a great feeling.
Well, you had the full-time job too. I mean, you're doing this while you have a job that you're going, 9 to 5 to?
Yeah.
So that takes a lot of discipline.
Yeah. But if it's something that you love, you do it.
Definitely. I couldn't agree more. And that's sort of why, we see people who have successful campaigns or spend 2 years on a product. It's because they genuinely love it. It's not because they're trying to make money. It's not because they're trying to hack the system in some way. It's because this is something they genuinely care about. That's why I spend so much time on my work too. Yeah, and it shows. I mean, the information that's on the site, and I think I mentioned in the email when you and I had first started talking, the whole the landing page. I had no idea that there was actually this whole, there's whole companies built just around, and not to demean it because it's actually really important, but just around doing landing pages. I think that was an eye opener. It's very hard to, coming from, if you're more of an innovator or you're more of an inventor, you don't want to think about those things. Like, I think that many people who are very skilled in a technical sense tend to look at marketing and sales as kind of like scammy, like, oh, I don't want to deal with that kind of stuff. Like, I just want to make the product.
Absolutely. And that's something which is a different mindset. And that goes back to initially what we said about inventor versus entrepreneur, because it is a different skill set. Totally different, and you have to be able to cross that divide if that's really what you want.
I want to transition our conversation to this upcoming Kickstarter campaign that you're planning, and some of the things that obviously you're going to be improving on things that you're going to be planning, but also I want to learn a bit about the product. Like, you're an inventor, you've come up with a few different cool concepts. Can you tell me a little bit about the product? I'm speaking to the crowdfunders in the audience who have already launched a Kickstarter campaign, or have actually even successfully run a campaign. And the reason is, I think you will understand this pain point most. And that is, when you finally do raise money on Kickstarter or Indiegogo, the hardest part is not collecting the cash. The hardest part is shipping out all of those perks and rewards to your backers. It is a nightmare, my friends. It's a lot of spreadsheets, it's a lot of headache, and it's a lot of stress. That's why I recommend BackerKit. If you have not heard of BackerKit, they help you collect surveys, they help you collect data, and the entire fulfillment process is just so much easier and so many less spreadsheets when you use their software. You can check them out at backerkit.com and use CrowdCrux for a special discount.
I can't really say a whole lot aside from it's something. Yeah.
Teasing the campaign here.
Sorry. What I can tell you is it's this really unique kind of jaw-dropping. When somebody walks by it, it's literally people just get mesmerized. I had it in my office as just trying to get people's feel. I didn't say anything about it. I just put it on my desk, kind of totally unassuming, and I had a flow of people just kind of coming in, staring at it, and quite literally their mouths dropped.
Wow.
I brought it into this was really interesting. I brought it in to show my boss, and he was looking at it, and so we transitioned away from talking about this. It's called glowscapes. From talking about glowscapes to the regular job stuff, and the entire time he was talking to me but staring at glowscapes the entire time. So it's like, there's something here. People really love this thing. It's going to be a really great. It's this really cool lighting piece that you can either use as like a nightlight or a piece of ambiance setting, or as a desk ornament, or just kind of anywhere where you want to add something really unique. I'm a really big believer in. I really love homemade stuff, and things which meld tech. So this is kind of like this wooden tech that has a really cool style and feel to it.
Cool. That's something I could include even in my YouTube background videos to catch attention, like that kind of stuff. If I wanted to get on the list to sort of be notified when this is out, when I can actually see what this thing is, where would I go?
You go to addictivedecor.com.
Cool.
And there will be a slight teaser of what that addictive visual piece looks like. You won't see the rest of it, but you just see this little piece, which I'm telling you will blow you away.
Nice. What is the other thing that you're going to be doing in this upcoming campaign differently? I know you talked a lot about landing page. You really want to focus on that. You want to have, compelling images, et cetera, marketed appropriately. Is there anything else differently you're doing with this campaign?
For this one, I'm starting early. I'm not going to hit that button until I'm really ready, until I have a large email list, until I have, established connections in the media, and not just one, because while my other one, I had that one main one, you need more than just one. Mm-hmm. So I'm starting now to make sure that this thing is successful. I want to take the luck portion of it out. I want to be able to drive this thing.
Mm-hmm. I think you've also learned from your very first campaign a lot by setting more realistic goals.
Absolutely. Yeah, the funding amount, I was really new to the whole 3D printing world, mm-hmm. and to plastic molding. So I did my best to kind of encapsulate how much this thing would cost. But it was like, when I look back on it, I go, $47,000. There's no way, that just wasn't realistic. So yeah, I mean, that last campaign that I did for Dr. Duino, was a modest, I think it was around 11,000. And this one is going to be somewhere between the $15,000 and $20,000 range.
Cool.
So it's reasonable.
What I love about your story, one of the reasons I want to have you on the podcast, and also what I've gotten out of this conversation, is the amazing lengths that you went to learn all of these different skills, and your willingness to keep trying things out even if you failed the first time around. Like, we think that, oh yeah, I'm going to launch this one campaign. If it doesn't do well, Kickstarter isn't for me. But you sort of kept at it, and you've made more of as you go with these different campaigns, you're learning, you're taking away new things, and you're applying them to the next campaign. It's almost like I can see this domino effect where you're slowly getting better and better at marketing. Yeah,
that's the whole point. I'm a big believer in, kind of putting yourself in the frying pan and it's like sink or swim. Got to do it. So eventually, I'm going to swim very hard.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I do want to give you an opportunity. If you have any questions to ask me, if you have any sort of curious about anything, I'd be happy to answer. But I'd also love it if you could just speak directly to the listeners of this podcast and either offer them a word of encouragement or to share something with them that you think could be helpful for their campaign. Anything like that, I think, would be really appreciated.
Yeah, sure. I think for me and for inventors and the entrepreneurs, the single biggest thing, and we've touched on it, it's something in the show, which is really don't give up, but you also need to know when to kind of give up, right? If it's not a great idea, it's okay. Put it down, do the next one, rinse, wash, and repeat. And just keep chugging at it because you will get it. There's no question.
Very well said. I think that the one thing I just want to pass on to you also as you're doing this campaign, which I do think is going to be a success just based on the lessons that you've had, is number one, the importance of that email list and being aware of engagement. So how many people are opening the emails, how many people are actually taking action, either replying or clicking links, etc. That's a really great indicator to see what kind of day one you're going to have. If you have a huge list but low engagement, not good for anyone involved. The second is one of the big trends I've noticed on Kickstarter is just Facebook advertising and the ROI that creators are getting. They're getting a lot out of that. So I don't know if you have a budget for this campaign, but learning a little bit about Facebook advertising in terms of retargeting, in terms of how do you actually create a lookalike audience, those types of things is going to be a really big boost to your campaign or anyone else listening if you decide to do that. And the last one is I'm actually working on a training product. It's probably going to come out in a couple months or so, but on PR. And I think you're going to do a lot better with this campaign because you can leverage that social proof that you create with getting in the media, getting people to write about you, and you can sort of trade up the value chain so that more and more people realize, hey, this is a cool product. Everyone is talking about this. I'm going to write about it, or I'm going to at least take that 2 seconds to check it out. And that just kind of boosts your campaign even more.
Yeah, those are great ideas. And certainly I'm definitely going to be looking towards doing the whole lookalike campaign. So a friend of mine had just mentioned that to me about a week or two ago. Yeah, I mean, I know nothing about it, but I'm definitely going to learn as much as I can.
Sweet. Well, thank you for coming on the podcast. Look forward to following up and see how your campaign does. And as always, I appreciate all of the advice and valuable information that you shared.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for sticking around to the end of this podcast. I know that this was a longer podcast. Typically, the ones I put out are around 30 minutes, but I was just loving this conversation. Like, we got so many different golden nuggets. Guido was extremely forthcoming, and I think he's kind of like the archetype here where he came from the crowdfunding demystified community. He learned based on free information on my website, on other sites, I assume, and also on this podcast. And he applied that information and was successful on Kickstarter. You can do this too. I would love it if in the future you launch a product, you come back on this podcast as a success story, and you share with me, Sal, all of the things that you learned, how the podcast helped you, and also the things that you discovered on your own. That would be the ultimate for me. That would bring me so much happiness to bring you on as a listener success story. So be sure to shoot me an email with your story, with your campaign, all that kind of stuff when you eventually do launch on Kickstarter, Indiegogo, or another crowdfunding website. And finally, if you do want to leverage to the max your PR potential, If you want to get in the media, you want the media to write about you, and you want to use that to elevate your brand and get free traffic, which you can turn into buyers, backers, revenue, and new customers, go and check out crowdcrux.com/PR. This is a lot of effort and time that I've invested in these training tutorial videos. I think you're going to like them, but there is no obligation here. You can just get on the email list. You can take advantage of some of the free things I'm going to be sharing. And then when the time comes, you can decide whether or not to join the community and to enroll in this course. It is totally up to you. I do think you're going to get a great ROI from this content. I'm really trying to make it extremely actionable and results focused. Again, thank you for joining me on this podcast episode. That is crowdcrux.com/PR, crowdcrux.com/PR. I'll see you next time.